There's a bazillion Bible studies. I noticed as a teacher, people don't need any more Bible as much as they need to put what Bible they know to practice. Man, I laid it all out. I confess, I wanted Christ so much more than I wanted whatever I was up to. And I started bawling like a baby. I mean, I hadn't met too many pastors that were that kind of a man. I had never seen a man that tender with a wife, nor respectful.
So that broke your paradigm of not only pastor, but man, husband.
Exactly. Both of those. So husbands ought to love their wives as Christ loved the church, and I snapped in half. I thought, man, it's been all about me. It's been all about my recreational pursuits. Now, that's what we need to be as Christians. We need to find a guy that's ahead of us and copy what's good about that guy and get good at it.
Welcome back to the MakeReady Podcast. My name is Brian Sims, and today I'm joined by my friend Jim Coté. Jim grew up in a home marked by abuse, marked by addiction, but he found redemption and a new legacy in Christ. We're going to talk about marriage. We're going to talk about breaking destructive patterns and his work with Master's Men. If you enjoy this conversation, please click the link and follow buttons so you never miss an episode. If you want to support our mission, there's a link in the description below. This is the MakeReady Podcast.
Jim Coté.
Hello, Brian.
You are the first guest I've had to have a cowboy hat and a mustache of that caliber.
Okay, thank you. When you are looking for some hair, there's times when, a mustache really helps.
Is that so?
Because you got all a man needs right there, brother. You don't need a hat.
I've got just this natural widow's peak anchor right here that's just holding it there.
If you ever want to get rid of that, let's transplant it right here.
Well, Jim, tell me your story. I think what you're doing with Master's Men is incredible, and we'll get into that. My father-in-law has just sung your praises. I've heard from other friends. Just you've got to meet Jim Coté from totally disparate angles. Like you've had an effect on all of my circles of friends. So I'd just love to learn more about you and where you come from.
Well, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful. And Al and Barbara, they were certainly a centerpiece of our lives all those years at Schofield Church. I'm really a composite of a lot of weird things. For starters, I was born and raised in California, which candidly I hesitate to to share that anymore. I'm half ashamed of the place, and don't even care if that offends people. I grew up in a rather poor home. My parents were both children of Dust Bowl refugees in California is how they got there. Mm-hmm. One set of the family from Kansas, the other from Oklahoma. My mom's side from Oklahoma.
We really forget that history.
What's that?
We really forget that history.
Yeah, you do. And it was a big deal. I mean, we got this immigration thing going on right now that's of a different breed, but we've had waves through the years in the United States, and they've taken people from one place, displaced them, and moved them to another, and then they have offspring, right? Hopefully that contribute to what's going on in society. So I guess I'm third generation from the fields in Kansas. My mom was a particularly bright lady, but in those days, going to college was difficult for ladies, particularly without money. Her mother died when she was a teenager, 14, I think. Her dad, my granddad, was kind of a cowboy and an engineer, they called him, that worked with air conditioning and things. So a good guy, taught me how to trout fish, and brought me a pair of cowboy boots and a cowboy hat every year for Christmas when we lived up toward Lake Tahoe as a kid. I grew up, was born in kind of the barrio of Los Angeles in Montebello. And my dad, rightly so, who was kind of a partial gangbanger back in the day, got married to my high-end mother, who was beautiful and smart and a really straight woman. He got out of Dodge as quick as possible, and we moved to the country when I was a little boy. And they would have another son and a daughter while we were out of town, so to speak. I loved all that. I still, to this day, love the outdoors. And was heartbroken when, at about age 12 or so, my dad's work and business collapsed, and we had to move into Los Angeles County proper. My brother needed specialized pediatric surgery, so the place to do that also was in Los Angeles. So that's where we moved in, and then I had to grapple with learning how to live in the city, being a country boy. And it was awkward the first couple of years,
imagine.
you know. I think I was 13 when we moved into town. They kept me back in the 7th grade because I was too immature to move up, you know. And yeah, so I mean, where do I go? I don't want this to take all of our time. Ultimately, I would get into sports, graduate from high school, play a couple of years of football in a junior college because my grades were so bad. They shoved me into engineering school at Long Beach State because I'm entrepreneurial and like to create. From mental images to physical structures. I love all that. But I hated, when I did my internship, I hated driving into downtown LA and getting in an elevator and going up in a high rise and sitting at a desk all day.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
And that was all before CAD machines. So during high school, I was a draftsman for a company. And I enjoyed drawing, but I didn't want to do that every day of my life. My dad was a lot of things. Hard worker, taught me how to work. Hunter, taught me how to hunt. Had some addictions that were not good for the family, and was gone from time to time for all the wrong reasons. At any rate, you don't know that as a kid. You wonder about the disruption in the home. You know, there was a season there where I'd get up in the middle of the night, my dad getting ready to go to work, my mom trying to make him breakfast, and have to separate the two of them, you know, and get a little whooping for myself. So there was some abuse in our home. I'm not proud to say that. But all these framed ultimately how I view life today and why the gospel and salvation and Jesus Christ are so incredibly important to me, because it really does fix things. So I quit college, started a business. It went exceedingly well. I was surfing all up and down the coast and loving it. I did contracting work, literally painting, but we were painting like industrial buildings with specialty coatings. So we'd work Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Big jobs.
Have the rest of the week off.
Yeah.
At 24 years old, that was pretty sweet. At the beach, I surfed with a bunch of guys. We had kind of a surf gang. And one of the guys had a girlfriend that was just anything and everything I had ever hoped to have for a wife. So it didn't take long to get him out of the way, and that's where I met my soon-to-be wife, Brenda. And we got married, and as soon as we did, I was living in Lake Tahoe at the time. There's a lot of pieces I'm leaving out. As soon as we got married, I noticed I started acting like my dad. And it really, I mean, even right now I start almost shaking. It really scared me because I didn't want that for my family. I mean, I cherished Brenda, and I didn't want to be mean or cantankerous or, you know, I didn't know what to do. My grandmother, my dad's side, had taken me to church. She was the pianist in a Baptist church in East Los Angeles. And she told me about Jesus, of course, as a kid. She took me to the I think it was the 67 Graham Crusade in LA Coliseum. And up in the Bleeds, I loved the message, and I told her, I want to be a Christian, Grandma. Let's go down there. And she said, no, Jimmy, you can accept Jesus right here in your seat. We're not going down on the floor of the Coliseum.
That's a long way down there.
Yeah, you know. So I believe I did. Because I went home. We were living up by Lake Tahoe then. And I went home and told my dad about it. And I remember the next Sunday we went to some sort of community church every now and then. We didn't go a lot, but we went the next Sunday, I think. And I walked an aisle. You know, I don't think it was a Baptist church, but I did that aisle walk thing. And you know, confess my faith in Christ. But man, there was no follow-up. And by the time I was 23 or 4, no. I mean, you would have questioned my salvation for sure. I'm not going to get into the stuff that I was doing before I got married, but it was not good. You know, a lot of my habits I learned at home, some of the dealings out in the community. I mean, not good. So I just remembered Grandma, and she went to an American Baptist church, which back in the day I think was pretty solid. Today it's pretty liberal, pretty sure. So when we got married, I told Brenda, hey, I think we need to go to church. She had been visiting a little Methodist chapel where she lived at Seal Beach, little teeny chapel. Maybe it sat 40 people because she had a desire for spiritual things. She didn't know where to go with it either. And I had a desire to be better, and I didn't know where to go with it. So we went to this little American Baptist church, and Pastor Salvaggio preached a clear gospel, took an interest in us, came over to the house one night, did an old-fashioned call, and went through the gospel with us. And I'm kind of feeling it now. Man, I laid it all out. I confess, I wanted Christ so much more than I wanted whatever I was up to. And I started bawling like a baby. And I remember that concerned me because big boys don't cry. I mean, I hadn't cried. I can't tell you when, because you just didn't do that in our house. And I thought Brenda might actually get up and leave. I really did. Those are the kind of people I hung out with. And she didn't. Instead, she accepted Christ. And so I don't know if I accepted Christ or rededicated my life. I don't know. But that was the beginning of all the change. And then I reckoned how messed up my life was and the people that I was participating in, a bunch of other stuff. And my family thing back then was not good either. So what I decided to do was get out of Dodge. So we moved to Idaho. In Idaho, I think it's important to my story, but I think it makes sense about what I do as a vocation now. I used to go to Idaho and deer hunt, and I hunted in a place called outside of McCall. McCall, back in those days, was on the edge of the largest untamed wilderness in the lower 48. And I don't know if it's Nez Perce, reservation. I don't remember what it was, but it was wilderness land, no construction. So I loved it. It was wild and untamed. And winters up there, a lot of snow. One of the best powder ski resorts in America at the time was up there called Brundage Mountain. And I loved the ski. And big deer, big elk, big fish, big everything, and no people. It was awesome. So I took Brenda up there. We went on a road trip. Let me back up. So I figured out I need to get out of Dodge. The last time I did that, I moved to Lake Tahoe. That didn't go very well. So now it's like, what am I going to do? Brenda's parents lived in Texas. The easy thing was to move to Texas. I had visited Texas for Christmas and decided it may be the most ugly place on earth.
But it is the Holy Lands.
But it is, I've learned it's the Holy Lands. So, and one of the threads in this story is this. I have the gift of selfishness. It's all about me. Always has been. I mean, at first it was all about my survival, and then it became about my success. So we pull into McCall. I want to just show her the area and move on. We're thinking we're maybe going to move to Colorado after going all the way up to the Yukon and back in a truck and a camper with our dog Susie. And we get into McCall, and it looks like a pretty neat little town. So I told her, I said, let's see if we can find a church here. I'd like to talk to a pastor. Where did that come from? So we did, and there was a little conservative Baptist church, McCall Conservative Baptist Church, and the pastor was Larry Jones, and he was in his office on a Monday. And I went in and started talking to Larry, and one thing I learned immediately is how much he loved the Lord and how he had so much of the Schofield Reference Bible, King James Version, memorized in the New Testament. Unbelievable. I was really impressed with that. I didn't know what Schofield was at the time, but so as we talked, and he found out that I, hunted in the area previously, and I was all about hunting and fishing in the outdoors and being selfish. He invited me to hang around for a couple of weeks, and Brenda and I camped, and he and I would go jog, go cut wood, go do this and go do that. And what I discovered about this pastor that was new to me about pastors, not that I was an expert, but he was a man's man. He was diminutive. I don't know if he was 5'9", 5'7". I don't know. He was not big, but he had a chainsaw with a bar on it like that. I mean, we go cut down tamarack trees and stuff for wood, was amazing. A big old four-wheel drive pickup truck. It was world-class elk hunter bow. He had several in Boone and Crockett. And, of course, he could fish. So we started hunting and fishing those 2 weeks. And then one night, one day or whatever, after a jog that we went on, I caught some sort of bronchial thing. And I got sick, and they ended up putting me into their home to get well. And by the time I got well, it was snowing, so we decided to stay.
Because you weren't leaving.
Yeah, and we lived there another year and a half till Brenda got pregnant, and we decided to move to Texas. Now, what happened in the meantime, the thing that really triggered me with him, I mean, what got my attention was the outdoors and the masculinity of it all. Mm-hmm. But when he went home, he invited us over to dinner one night before I got sick. I had never seen a man that tender with a wife, nor respectful.
So that broke your paradigm of not only pastor, but man, husband.
Exactly. Both of those, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hadn't met too many pastors that were that kind of a man. And I'd met zero men that had anything to do with tenderness in the home, no profanity, no drinking, nothing else, and he doted on his children. I thought, that's what I want, because I love my dad. I respected him, and I respected all of his guys, and of course I wanted to be like them, and I was. Unfortunately, I ended up. That's where I ended up. They were all into hunting too. I mean, in those days, those wives stayed home and took care of everything, and the men did whatever they wanted. I remember my dad telling my mom time after time, she'd say, "Oh, honey, when are you going to be home?" You know, we're heading out to go hunting for the weekend. He'd say, "I'll be home when the truck pulls in the driveway." I mean, that's the kind of attitude I grew up with. You know, like, shut up and sit down, woman. So I hung out with Larry and kind of became his assistant, got really engaged in reading the Bible and prayer, and then unbeknownst to me, and Brenda, she was pregnant. We didn't know it, but right about that time, and it's a dead of winter right before Christmas, we're living in an 8x40 trailer in a trailer park. We had a big old wood stove in it, and they used to tease us at church that we were the only yard in McCall that had grass, you know, in January, because the heat went straight through the walls of that trailer and kept the grass warm. And it was pretty much true. Any rate, I read a passage of Scripture one morning, Ephesians chapter 5, verse 25. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might cleanse her with the washing of water of his word, and that he might present her to himself without spot or wrinkle or any such thing. So husbands ought to love their wives as Christ loved the church. And I snapped in half. I thought, man, it's been all about me. It's been all about my recreational pursuits, you know. So Larry was also a Dallas seminary guy. He did not have the chance to go to school here, but he was mentored by guys that did, and he was reading everything that came out from the profs, and he was handing them off to me, plus giving me loads of John MacArthur audio tapes and Chuck Swindoll. So we came down here for Christmas of '80, found out Brenda was pregnant and having trouble with the pregnancy, decided she should stay, I should go home, sell the trailer in January.
Yeah. All the people moving up wanting to get...
Of course, this will be easy. And move there. I had learned how to pray. Larry was a big, not name it and claim it guy at all, none of that. But what he was is he taught me how to live supernaturally. Maybe we talk about that later. But it fundamentally is get tight with God, read his word to where you get it, and you can go to the word and say, I'm in a situation, this applies, please help me, and bam. So, you know, I did that with the trailer. I figured out a price, put an ad in the paper at the last minute, literally never left the thing. If I took a shower, I put the telephone on the toilet. I got one call. He cash offered me exactly what I'd prayed about, and I was out of there within a week. Crazy. That doesn't happen. So we moved to Dallas.
That does not happen, because you were needed elsewhere.
Yeah. To shorten it, to get on to, so we can talk about something else. So we came here. I said I quit college. I really had flunked out because I was surfing and playing and this business. So I had about a year and a half to go in engineering school. Hated engineering. I'd already told you that. So I come down here. I want to go to Dallas Seminary. Not a chance. You don't have an undergraduate degree. So instead, I joined everything I could join to get training. Got real involved in Schofield. In fact, that's another story. Pastor Neil Ashcraft was there. We rolled into Lake Highlands where Brenda's folks lived and saw that church, Schofield Memorial, and I told her, that's the Bible Larry uses with me, Schofield Bible. And we need to check it out. Let's go in there. So we go in there Monday, and he's in the office, and we meet Pastor Neil. I don't know if you ever met him.
Mm-mm.
What a pastor's pastor.
I've heard about him. Yeah,
I mean, phenomenal guy. Oh, my gosh. And for me, having trouble with leadership, because the same thing, playing football and stuff, I mean, most of my authority figures growing up were more selfish than me. I mean, it was all about them. And so here's a pastor that he was awesome. And so we joined that church, and I joined everything I could join. Ended up doing their evangelism stuff because I trained in evangelism. And then we had all these Dallas Seminary profs and doctoral students going to church there. Somehow within a year, I was a Sunday school teacher in an adult Sunday school class teaching missionaries and students. And I cherry-picked people at the seminary to teach me. I had a painting and contracting business, so I could take some time off. So I got a hold of doctoral students, for sure, but also a bunch of profs. And whatever their discipline was, I just asked them if they would mind me spending an hour with them, maybe even once a week or regularly. And everybody said yeah. And I would meet with them. They would give me assignments. I would go do the work and come back and meet with them and do that in Greek, world history, apologetics, theology, you name it. And Howard Hendricks was cute because he said, well, Jim, I can't disciple you, because he had like 4 million other guys that wanted to do that. But he said, and I'd met him because Jean had called me to paint their house. I don't know how she got my number. And he was home, and we chatted for about 2 hours in the living room. So I got the house painted and moved on. So I was doing this. I called Prof. I was working with his son Bill on a book project. Mm-hmm. And he said, Jim, I can't disciple you, but I'll have coffee with you anytime you want to call me. So I did that for 10 years. I'm leaving a lot out of the story.
So you did get the discipleship, pretty much.
Yeah, and at the end of 10 years, Don Campbell, president Dallas Seminary, Prof, and the guys from Schofield, they ordained me to ministry. I don't have a degree from Dallas. Here I am. I did go back and get my undergraduate degree in business management. Not that it does me any good, but I did that. And from Schofield, I got a call from the owner of Interstate Batteries to talk about producing a chaplaincy within the business. And I guess the interview went well because they hired me. And I worked at Interstate for 10 years as their corporate chaplain. Million things we did. I loved working with Norm. Again, I'm an entrepreneur. I have a weird, I guess it's a gift. If you tell me something, you were in engineering school. If you bring up an idea, I have this weird ability to see the end of it. Well, if you can see the end of a thing, you can plot how to
plot your path there.
Yeah. So Norm was a big idea guy. And he threw out an idea to me early in my tenure there, and I produced it. And he's like, cool. So we kept doing that. And man, we had a lot of fun. We ended up creating a ministry within the company where we did all kinds of inner city work here in Dallas and other places. And on it went. That's when we got involved in racing too, and I started playing chaplain for race teams. And at the end of 10 years, Norm moved on to do some other stuff, put the business in the hand of somebody else. And I just didn't want to not work with Norm. And I had an invitation to go to the East Coast and be part of what NASCAR was doing as a chaplain. And so I did that in '98. And I'm to this day, I wonder about that decision because it was so painful to my family. Now remember, I have the gift of selfishness. And I yanked my oldest out of senior year of high school, my middle one out of his junior year. And my youngest, he was no big deal, really, first grade. But I tore Brenda away from all of her friends. Schofield, our church, elder, Sunday school teacher. And went there. And when I got there, the ministry, the founder of the ministry, this bleeds into a conversation we had before we started. The board put him on emeritus status because he had a vision for Europe with F1, and they didn't want to do it. So they put him on emeritus status, and they brought in a Fortune 500 guy to run the ministry, and it did not go well. I don't think he'd ever run a ministry. He's a Christian guy, but running a ministry is different than running a company, a big company. So after a couple of years, that thing kind of sank. Income sank, and several of us had to scatter like quail to figure out what we're going to do with our lives. And here I am, my whole family's on the East Coast. I had started a chaplaincy at DEI, Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, so I was chaplain there, and I could kind of hang on to that as a start. And I was well known within NASCAR, so that was nice. But the guys in Dallas had been banging on me for years to start what we called years ago Master's Men. Back up. Master's Men came out of an attempt by me in about 1995, 3 years before I left Interstate, to join the Park Cities Club gym and work out, because I gained about 45 pounds working in an office for 10 years.
As one does.
So we went over there to play basketball and lift weights and stuff. I did, and to meet guys, literally, so I could do ministry with them, which has kind of always been my thing. And I met a bunch of Christian guys. Dirk Hansen was one of them. Lyle Blackwood was there. He played NFL for years, and found out a couple of things. It was really hard to share Christ under a basketball net with all of the elbows and stuff, And I wasn't a part of them, but I got to see several fistfights. It was interesting at lunch between 45-year-olds, and the guys figured out that I guess I was different. So they, what do you do? I'm a chaplain. Or say, hey, let's have a men's Bible study. To which I said no. I'd heard a sermon by Chuck Swindoll when I was in Idaho, and he made the bold statement a long time ago that in the evangelical world, particularly the Bible church world, he said people don't need any more Bible as much as they need to put what Bible they know to practice. Well, in Dallas back in the mid-'90s, as it is today, there's a bazillion Bible studies, and there was even a bazillion men's studies. But I noticed as a teacher that there was a gap between intellectual education and the experiential education of putting it into practice. That true transformity didn't happen until you practice what you knew. Up to that point, it would just be head knowledge. So what I preferred was an interactive exchange. Bible as a base of conversation, world issues, what drives us to the Bible for information, and we discuss it together, and then we live together. What do you mean live together? Well, if his fence gets blown down in a windstorm, we'll help him put it back up. If his wife is in the hospital, we'll figure out a way to help him with the kids. We will go dove hunting every year together, and we will take the kids, but the wife's going to have the weekend off. I mean, stuff like that that you could do here in Dallas. We started that at Schofield, and it went up like a rocket. So when the guys at the basketball place wanted to do a Bible study, I said, no, but I will do an interactive study where we do what I just explained. And 6 other guys and me, so I guess 3 or 4 of the basketball guys, a couple guys at Interstate, we started praying about it. We prayed 6 weeks. On the 7th week, we decided we'd launch it. And in the meantime, I walked across the courtyard where the offices were and where Parks Central Club was. And there used to be a hotel, probably is now, maybe where the Radisson's at, there was a hotel there. It was pretty nice back in the day. And talked to the manager. Well, he's a believer. And I told him what I wanted to do. I'd like to have a breakout room to do it. He said, man, I'll give you a ballroom, and I'll provide coffee and pastries. So 7 weeks later, we started it. And these other 6 guys and myself, we invited guys. And we had 50 guys show up the first day. And I don't know when we started it. But what I would do after I led a lesson, of course I had a lesson plan. We're going to talk about this. And I would throw it out there and we'd interact. And at the end of the time, I would go quickly back to my office, which I was fortunate to have a secretary. And I would either dictate or write it out on a sheet of paper and have Mary type it. I would write what we talked about. And then we formalized it, and I sent it to everybody in the room. A couple of things. One of the things that's different with the Masters men's team, we call them, is that the prayer component is the most important part, I believe. And the prayer component is this: when you come, we'll check in with you and figure out what's going on and tell stories, but at some point we'll say, time out, how can we pray for you? And most of the time, if you remember Sunday school classes, prayer time, bunch of hands shoot up from the women, no men. And if a guy raises his hand, honestly, it was like, hey, my uncle, he lives in Philadelphia. He's got an F-150 pickup truck, and the transmission went out, and he's having trouble finding the parts for it. Can we pray for him? Yeah, we can pray for him. We can do that. And we do. In this group, I want you, or I want me, to tell you, so we broke guys into twos. One thing that if God would wave a wand over some part of your life that you're not happy with, what would it be? And we'll ask God, help. It worked. Even guys that had never prayed before. I tell them, if you're uncomfortable praying, don't pray. Just when you get in the car and leave for work, just say, hey, Brian, he's got this thing going on at work, he's impatient about it, help me have some patience. Just do that. Man, within a few weeks, the best part of the morning was hearing all these guys praying out loud. I don't know if it was a year later or what, but I do know that before Valentine's hit, we decided to have a Valentine's party at that hotel, invite the women, and do it up. Top-end dinner from the place, whatever. Chicken and steak, the drill with the banquet, right? Rose for every lady. I had one of the Texas Rangers. There was a guy that lived here for years, John Weber, and he was the chaplain for the Cowboys and the chaplain for the Rangers. And he would call on me from time to time to sub for him when he was out of town or something was going on. So I got to know some of the guys, and I called one of the Ranger pitchers. I can't think of his name right now. And he and his wife came and spoke. And then we got a singer from our church who's like a recording artist, and she sang. And the night was unbelievable. By that time, we had 100 guys in this team. We took up a whole banquet room at that. So I knew we were onto something, but the best part was that night, several of the ladies came up to me and thanked me and said they were reading it wasn't a newsletter, but they were reading the notes that I sent out. And they said, I remember one of them said specifically, he used to do carpool on Wednesdays. I've switched so he can come to your thing. And I thought, it's working. Because like I told you before we met, I was really trying to change my family. If my dad, who I loved, if he'd walked with the Lord, it would have been better. And because he didn't, it was worse. And I knew I was heading down that road too until Larry got me squared away. Jesus got me squared away with rededicating my life, and then Larry helped me get on to see what it looked like. And so that's what we were trying to do. If the women were buying in, it told me the guys were changing at home. And so fast forward, now I'm in Charlotte. My world's caved in on me, and it's all my fault. And one of the guys here, Richard Dobry, and you know him, father-in-law to Andrew, and Thomas and Jason. He kept bugging me to start this, and I told him in my arrogance, I didn't want to do a small ministry. At Interstate, what I haven't told you is that a big part of why Norm hired a guy, he hired me, but hired a guy, was he gave away millions of dollars every year to Christian charities. And as it says in Proverbs, a man who gives gifts has many friends. So his phone rang off the hook for people wanting to either say thanks or wanting to come in and talk to him about a gift. So he needed some sort of gatekeeper and some sort of auditor to sift through all the incoming to figure out what projects to bring him. And that became my primary job. It ended up becoming such a big deal, and the chaplaincy ended up becoming such a big deal. I mean, we ended up doing video and books for our salesmen. I mean, it was monstrous. That's how I worked with Bill Hendricks. That we ended up having a full staff upstairs of chaplains. And I also saw how all these missions operated financially. And there was a lot of it that just was bad business. So I didn't want to do it. I wanted to be a part of a successful, large organization. I mean, I just left. We were the #1 battery company in America. So, my youthful ignorance and pride, arrogance, I kept telling Richard no. But when the nonprofit went under in Charlotte, for some crazy reason, I'd co-authored a book with Bill Hendricks here in Dallas. It was called, I think it was called On the Road Again. Wanted it to be called Marriage and the Road, but Willie Nelson's title took over. And I met a journalist that interviewed me, and I insisted on bringing Brenda in, and we talked about marriage, Christian marriage. She was so impressed that I would bring my wife in on a marketing interview, like this, that she told her husband about it, who was the primary decision maker at InterVarsity Press. So when I was in Charlotte, I had taught a series at Schofield that I thought I could use for men, and I decided to write the manuscript, and I sent it to Jeff Crosby up at InterVarsity Press. Well, they approved it immediately, and within like 6 weeks, it was out. We ran out of money at that ministry August of 2000. I was in Dallas. I had to fire all my chaplains. We had 22 series we were serving with chaplains. I fired all but like 3. I had to. We were out of money. I didn't get a paycheck. So when I came into town, I'd meet with some of the remnant of the old Masters Men group. And at that meeting, they said, "You need to start Masters Men." I had every excuse there was. I said, "Well, I don't want to run a small ministry because I don't want to raise money." And they said, "Well, you're going to have to figure that out because you need to do this." I said, "Yeah, but I need an attorney. I mean, you have to file papers and do all this stuff with the state." Well, Jay Snow, who was general counsel for Interstate for a few years, he was there, and he said, "I'll do all the paperwork." I'm like, "Well, I need an accountant. I've seen so much abuse in the nonprofit world. I want like a legitimate, not just a CPA, but I want a CPA firm." Well, a guy by the name of Steve Gone, who came to our meetings, but I didn't know him well at all. He raised his hand and said, I'm a principal at Houston and Morgan, Malsby, who office right over here. He said, "I'll take care of all the books." I said, "Well, I need someone to pick up the mail stuff. We got to do all that. We need a post office, we need a bank, And Richard goes, "Well, Mark Wells, Jim, at, I forget what the name of the bank was." I'm like, "Yeah." He said, I'll open accounts for you over there, and I'll pick up the mail." I had no excuse. So then I said, "Well, money. We're going to need money to start. You can't start a business without money." I mean, I'd started, I don't know how many, one in L.A., one in Idaho, one in Dallas. And they're like, "Well, how much do you need?" And I said, "Well, we need X. We need this much." And they said, "Well, do you know anybody you can get that much from?" And I thought, there's a couple guys I know that might be able to help toward that. One of the things, too, that I learned at the other ministry, and I learned when I was auditing all the ministries for 10 years, is that boards can wreck ministries. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of ways they can do it. Founders can wreck them, too. But one of the things that can really mess up a ministry in a hurry is if your board is only check writers, only money guys. So I didn't want any check writers. I mean, what I wanted for a board is I wanted players. Mm-hmm. I wanted guys that were doing men's ministry to be my board. They can all write a check. I mean, we all write checks, right? You write checks. I just didn't want to build a model that was based on 2 or 3 major donors,
Because you'd seen that.
Yeah. So I said, well, there's 2 guys They said, well, you go talk to him. When you drive back, I'm driving back to Charlotte. They said, if you raise the money, we'll go. So I go talk to guy number one here in Dallas. I tell him the whole story, and he's like, well, how much you need? And I said, I can't tell you. You know, it's one of these guys, this supernatural living thing. I mean, for me to know, it's going to have to happen, you know. That's what I'm thinking. And you don't need to know the number. So I said, I can't tell you. So he says, well, this is what I'll do, man. You really helped me through blah, blah, blah. He said, this is what I'll do. He said, I'll write you a check today for this much. And then at the end of the year, I'll write you another one for year end. And then in the first quarter of next year, I'll write you a third. Okay? Will that help you? Well, I had to play poker, right? Because he's already tripled what I thought I needed. So I had one other guy to talk to, and he was in a different city. I went over to see him. He told me a sad story that I'd heard too many times. He said, yeah, we have an inner city ministry here, which I knew. And he said, the guy decided to run off with the secretary, so we closed the ministry, and all the money that's in the bank for that ministry, you can have it. Well, it was this plus. So I went home and resigned and had JH file the papers and Steve get things ready and Richard open a bank account. And we started officially August of 2000. And in 2001, I would move back here first to sell the house and keep the kids in school in Charlotte. Dale Earnhardt, as you know, died in February at the Daytona Speedway, which was a big deal. I felt bad about leaving town when that happened, but I was there when it happened, and I was there walking with all the people through all the stuff and the funeral. And we ramped up, and here I am, 25 years later. This is our 25th anniversary.
Is it really your 25th anniversary?
I've said a lot of things. I don't know if I helped this podcast at all.
So that's the foundation. I mean, what has really just sparked something in me is your not only humility in seeing God's hand in all of it, and that like left to our own devices, none of that would happen. Like He has to go ahead of us, and we have to be humble and take steps.
Right on.
But I loved how you talked about your wife, how you talked about who was the pastor up in Idaho.
Yeah, Larry Jones.
And how that changed your paradigm of what a man was.
Yeah.
Because I think that is very much missing today.
Mm-hmm.
The role models that we have, forget from culture, but the role models we have in the church, the role models we have in our family lines have, not all of them, but a lot of them have given very poor representations of what it should look like to be a man after God's own heart.
You can't, you're an engineer. It's really hard to just have the first idea. I'm not sure you can know how to do it if you haven't seen it demonstrated in another man. I love 1 Thessalonians chapter 1. Paul talks about that dynamic as he talks about how he imitated to the church in Thessalonica, and they became examples as a result of his imitating. One of the Greek words, I don't know if it's imitation or example, one of them is a Greek word, tupo. Remember earlier I told you I'm just enough Greek and Hebrew to create problems. Not this ring, that's my wedding ring, but I have a ring that's silver, and it has a silver Mexican coin on it. I don't know if it's what it is. I don't know what it is, $1 or $10. But it's beautiful. It's got this eagle and their flag and all that. I got it way back a long time ago. I don't even know why or how. But I remember studying that verse and thinking about that ring. Tupo is the idea of taking a malleable something and stamping it hard. Whack. Like a coin.
Mm-hmm.
And the image, stain. And when you think about coins, I inherited my uncle who died in World War II. I'm named after him. I inherited his coin collection. And so I've got coins at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, And you can still see the image 100 and some years later. And that's what Paul's talking about, that Christianity should be lived out in such a way that people can embrace it and copy it. They can imitate it because it stamps them. And the stamping, obviously by the Holy Spirit and His Word, His truth, it stamps in such a fashion that they don't change. You know, I love that part about Christianity. It's meant for change. It's meant for bringing people up and blessing them.
Do you think that's missing today?
I know we want to do that. And I know we try to do it. And we try, my opinion, I think we copy the world too much. I know we're impacted by movies, visuals, even plays, theater, athleticisms and athletics. I mean, we're impressed by all that. And I think we try to present the gospel like we've been impressed. But the gospel is more than just communication, whether it's words or a visual. The gospel needs to be demonstrated in life change. So when somebody says they're Christian and then they do some remarkable thing, you're like, oh, that's what it looks like. Rather than, well, I'm not sure what that means, but I'm sure I'll figure it out soon enough. I'll give you a recent example. I just got back from an overseas hunt that the board gave me for the 25th. Dream come true. Amazing. I even hesitate to talk about it because I don't want to brag about it, because unless that happened, I would have never been able to do it either. So I'm sure whoever's going to listen to this thing, they're like, well, I can't do it. But anyway, I have to say it because this is what happened. The first 2 days over there. Now, I grew up in the country, remember? Mm-hmm. I've literally hunted with a gun since I'm 6 years old. Mm-hmm. I'm way past 6. And I've hunted a lot of places. Canada, Mexico, United States, Norway. I get over there, and I'm not feeling it. The guy, my guide, I'm needing to follow this guy and do it his way, and yet I kind of like to do it my way, you know? Remember? Gift of selfishness? And for 2 days, I struggle with that. I mean, he wants me really close to him. I mean, like right off his bum. In fact, he's got a CZ 9mm right here, and he holds his hand back there, and he gives me hand signals. So he wants me even closer than we are right now. And so he'll like, means come up, or slow down, stop, hard stop, quick come up. And I'm struggling with it all. I'm struggling with the brush. I'm struggling with I can't see. I don't recognize the animals. I'm struggling with it all. And by the end of the second day, we weren't even talking to each other. Now, he was a great guy. I mean, we fell in love with, at least I did. He was a great guy. But it was just the hunt. And at some point, I need to talk about SARS, because this is what got in the way. Not the disease, but something else. But at any rate, we're both driving for success, and we're going 2 different directions. And the Lord spoke crystal clear to me that night in my prayer time. He's like, I'm trying to teach you how to follow. You know that verse that you quote every morning when you get out of bed? Put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh and guard against lust. I'm trying to teach you how to put on your professional hunter so you can be a better hunter. If you will just quit being arrogant and independent and submit and do exactly what he says, even though it's humiliating to be treated like a dog, just do it. On the 3rd day, I started doing it. And then bam, bam, bam. I saw in Jan Lu, my guide, what it looked like to be a world-class hunter. I'm not. I shouldn't even kid myself that I was close. But after 4 days with him, much better. Now, that's what we need to be as Christians. We need to find a guy that's ahead of us, a mentor, if you will, and copy what's good about that guy and get good at it and share it with others.
Gosh, man, we have such a hard time submitting to that idea, because I think we know it. I think we know that's what we're supposed to do. And we were talking earlier just about how that plays out in church, how men are, if not absent, silent in most churches.
I'm with you, Brian. I think we have a modern problem. This may just be an excuse. I've got a little piece of property out west, and when I go out to work it, the guys that work it for me may or may not be there. They may be chasing cattle somewhere or whatever. But when they're there, no matter what's happening, I get involved. They need some wire. They need a tool. They need some help. They need whatever. In the city, we just don't hang out much together. We don't help each other. We don't do things together. We have to make appointments. We go to church to see our church friends, Christian friends. We make appointments to go over to somebody's house. We're all busy. The kids are in soccer. There's this going on. Wives are working. I mean, it's just, I think to really flesh out the Christian life, and this is part of the dynamic, what we're trying to do with Masters Men. We're just trying. I'm not saying we got it all together at all. But I noticed that those 12 guys spent 3 years. I don't know how they worked in the fishing time. And another thing I learned with Jan Lou, my guide, Peter and those guys were professionals. Mm-hmm. Jesus was a teacher, a rabbi. He walks up to them while they're cleaning nets and says, "Follow me, I will teach you." I wonder if they had pushback like I did with Jan Lou, you know? But that's what worked. He got engaged in the community. We can't. I know he wasn't married, didn't have a job, blah, blah. I get it, didn't have a house, nothing. But we got to figure out ways to get more embedded with one another. That little dynamic out there, we should do more of that. If it's spontaneous, we need to tell ourselves, I'm going to be 15 minutes late to that appointment. And just do that, you know? Mm-hmm. And then go from there.
We don't provide flexibility for
No.
that. Yeah. Because those they don't just happen.
Look how long it took for us to get together. It's been 2 months?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's packed, right?
And they're not all not good things that are filling our time. There's all great things. Yeah. There's all great things. I had a conversation the other day about how churches, what do they spend? We did this research, and I've said it before, the churches spend 10 times as much money on women's ministry as they do men's ministry. And when they do spend money on men's ministry, it's for a barbecue or a Saturday breakfast.
Right.
And it's a lot of the time men have to decide, am I going to stay home on the one day a week that I get to wake up with my kids and hang out with them on a Saturday? Or do I go have breakfast with a bunch of guys that I don't really have anything in common with other than we were all invited to this thing? Like, I have these competing priorities. So what do?
Yeah. big question. I hesitate to say anything because I don't want to come across like I know what to do. I think though one of my doggednesses, or one of my gifts, but maybe I'm just dogged about it, I hate the word no. And I try to find a yes for things, a solution for things. I think a lot of men try to be fixers and solution guys.
It's part of our nature.
Yeah, right? Thank you. But I know we can do this. The other day, I had an appointment with a young man I'm mentoring, and my son came downstairs and said, "Hey, you want to go to breakfast?" He's staying with us temporarily. I had an appointment that morning. I texted the guy. I said, "Hey, my son just invited me to breakfast." He said, "Then I'll see you next week." Right?
Yeah.
Why was it so hard for me to do that? I had to wrestle with it for 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. You know, we're also so responsible. You know, we put ourselves in a responsible place, and then we're like, darned if we're going to be flexible. Mm-hmm. You know, we're doing this. I think that's just one thing that we maybe need to take a look at. Another one, I think, where we can all begin is with whoever we're with. You're fortunately here with a few guys, it looks like. Maybe let's pretend I office with you. Maybe we would say to one another, we're going to be a team. Mm-hmm. We're going to try to have coffee at least once a week out here spontaneously. By that, there's no agenda. We're just going to chat it up. And hopefully what will accrue was we'll not only learn more about each other, but we'll know where you could use a little help or a blessing or encouragement or whatever. And just be there for another guy. Mm-hmm. I had a younger man the other day ask me about doing ministry. He's wiped out with kids and job and church, choir and Sunday school class teacher and all that. Like, he's busy, right? And yet he wants to do men's ministry. And I've never been asked that question, so I'm going to blame the Lord on the answer. I just said, I work on 7 things every day. I work, and I have yanked them out of Proverbs 9, whether they're in there or not. I found them in there, okay, and they are that I have got a spiritual life I need to attend to, an emotional world, physical, intellectual, relational, economic, occupational, and recreation. Which I mean it. Genesis 1, rest, renewal. I'm working on that all the time. I said, what if you just worked on being the best you? And then as you meet guys and they're asking you about how to do this or that, since you've worked so much on these 7, what I think are the pillars, I really do think they're the pillars of life, you'll be able to speak into it. And we both were like, that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Whether it is or not, I don't know, but it worked then in the conversation, which means if you became the best version of you biblically, I got to say I believe, or I even know, that you'll be attractive to other men, for sure. But I think God would be pushing guys at you like, go follow Brian, go follow Brian, go follow Brian.
I just need your mustache. And then
yeah, but you got all that hair.
So you've heard the adage of women relate to each other face to face and men relate to each other side by side.
Yeah. We need to change that. It's true. There's nothing wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when I was in Kenya on this trip, we've got a ministry base over there, and our director has cancer bad. So I went over to visit him and meet the guys. And Kenyans are a particularly wonderful people. The guys are really loving, genuine. It's weird. At any rate, when he came in, he hadn't seen him in months, and we had a little conference together, and the guys came in, and he stood up and spoke. Oh, my gosh. I mean, you would have thought, I don't know, Paul showed up, you know? The adoration and the love, and I've never seen anything like it in my life. And for the first time, I thought, okay, so that's what it felt like when John laid his head against Jesus' breast at dinner. I mean, to be in an atmosphere, an environment of men, and these are masculine guys, man, and have no shame about phileo love. I mean, I think that's missing too in the States. You know, I don't know if it's the John Wayne thing, you know, lives on, but to be able to really love another man, or maybe that's what the gay movement has wrecked in Christianity, is that we can't get close to another for fear of it going wrong, you know? I don't know.
Well, we prioritize individualism. I can do it. It's part of being a man. It's part of being authentically masculine. You know, I have to have this ruggedness and this ability to lead myself and do these things, which are good, but it's not the whole picture.
No. Keep going, because I don't want you to tell me next. I'm going to learn from you. That's absolutely a driving pillar. How do you combine that with the rest of what we're supposed to be like? What would you say?
Well, it's not one or the other. It's authenticity, and not authenticity as in let's tell each other our struggles and affirm them. That's what the left does. That's what liberalism does. That's what the world does. It says, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and I'll tell you about it just so I can be affirmed in doing that.
Good point. Good distinction. Yeah.
And I think that what the reaction of well-meaning men is, well, I can't do that. That would be no good. I can't be authentic.
So we're on the right track if we say, tell me where you're a screw up. Now let's fix it.
Exactly. Because I'm going to get this totally wrong. It's like, I love you too much to leave you where you are.
Okay.
But I have to know where you are in order not to leave you there.
And you have to know where a guy's at in order to get it out of there where he needs to be.
We miss that. And that only happens that doesn't happen in a Bible study.
No, it does not. It happens in a hospital room. It happens under a car. It happens in a backyard. It happens anywhere but. One of the things, and the Bible church movement, you know, and I'm a part of it, I mean, intellectualism, cognition, you know, with very little emotion. Emotion then being misunderstood as touchy feeling when it really means just heart connection. You know, we're beginning to see eye to eye, you know, but psychologically, emotionally, lovingly, caringly, heart, not head. Yeah, we're not very good at that as men either.
Do you think we're scared of it?
Yeah, I do. I do. Why? I don't know.
I don't either, because it's like, what's the worst that could happen?
Oh, you know what I like about this subject, what you just brought up? The worst that could happen is you get a bloody nose. You get punched. Here's a question to ask your guys. You get them together. Ask how many guys have ever been in a fist fight. You'd be surprised at how many guys have never been in a fist fight.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is that something to celebrate? Well, I don't know that it's worth celebrating, but it says something about our generation or generations that we're not very physical. I mean, on a football field, yeah, with a bunch of pads, you know. But are you prepared to be physical in defense of something that you cherish and you're responsible for? Are you? Or do you think you're going to talk your way out of it? No, you're going to end up capitulating is what you're going to do.
Yep.
And man, when was the last time you talked about this very subject?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe never?
No, like it's the gosh, we were talking about this earlier. The physicality of men has been muted.
Right.
And it's well, why don't you just be more like women?
So let's go there. let's go there because I got to bring up SARS. When I failed when it all went down bad in Charlotte, we get home and InterVarsity's done a book, and I'm wanting to write another one to help the men's movement. And I get to talking to Brenda about, okay, so what really is the deal with male-female relationships? You know, husband and wife, marriage. Okay, you and me. You know, tell me what the most important drivers are for you. What's the most important things to you? And so she starts thinking about it. And I start thinking about what's the most important thing to me? And together we came up with this acronym, SARS. It was before the first disease. It really was. SARS. I'm like, we both have SARS. You have an S, and you have an A, and you have an R, and you have an S, and they're completely different. I mean, we found all of that after the fact that we discussed it. So what are they? Well, what do you think for S? What is like a big driver for a man?
Sex.
There you go. What about A?
Affirmation.
For a man.
For a man.
Now, it might be for you personally. My love language is affirmation, but most men really are driving for, and it's the reason that you did not go in the oil business. You went ahead and dealt with the camera when you didn't know what you were doing, and now you're in the media business. It is adventure. You want an adventure.
Okay, I take my answer. Adventure 100%.
Isn't that weird?
Yes, absolutely. You need something to you go on an adventure.
Yeah.
That's why every movie that we respond to is the adventure. It's the hero's journey.
Thank you. The hero's journey. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe another thing that's missing is kids today, I don't know if they want to be heroes. In my day, man, you want to be a hero. You know? So the R for a man, very important. And every one of these, when we get to it, you're going to go, oh, of course.
But I'm not going to be able to come up with it.
No, but you might stumble on it. What do you think the R is?
Gosh, I'm gonna guess like reflection or something.
Well, it's part of why you drive for adventure. You want respect.
Respect.
Every fist fight, every war starts with a lack of respect. Every marital fight, lack of respect, particularly for men.
Gosh, isn't that the truth?
Disrespect a man, right? And then the S for men, I think, is success. That package. Sex, adventure, respect, and success drives us. There's some other ornaments on the Christmas tree, but those are the four big ones, I think. And then the sex thing, we got to come back to it. So for a woman, remember, as we talked about earlier, right? The man was made from the dirt. She was not. She was made from the man. You know, she's different. And it's a good thing. I mean, for every good reason, plus they look better. She's driven towards security, affection, relationships, and stability, a double down. And to me, the physicality of man kind of represents all those things. I mean, all of this came to me years ago when I was looking at I was down southwest Texas somewhere, and there was a bull out in the meadow, and he had about, 12 cows around him, you know. And I came around a corner, and the road went down, and it came around like this, and it came down around like that. He was standing on a knoll. And when I saw him, man, he had the biggest set of testicles you ever seen in your life, you know? And he was standing there just pinning those cows like y'all are mine, you know? And get ready, because I'm coming. We protrude. One of the Greek, it's a bit obtuse, but one of the Greek words, potentially, I'm stealing this from another author, is that the word for man could be translated potentially Hebrew. Did I say Greek? Hebrew. Piercer. And that's what we do. We pierce. When we fulfill the first commission, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it, we pierce to get that done. Mm-hmm. And it produces. We pierce boundaries. We pierce through boundaries. Our forebears did it as they pierced through the frontier here, or even came across the Atlantic Ocean. We
affect.
Yeah, out. I mean, media technology, AI, all of it. I mean, we're out. We pierce. It takes physicality. It takes muscularity. When you look at the physicality of man, Gruden and Piper have done a fantastic work on the physiology of male and female, comparison and contrast. Men have greater lung capacity, denser bone structure, testosterone, a lot more of it than women. They may have a dose. Their deal is estrogen. We have just the whole structure of us is meant for fight and bruteness, just physically. Mm-hmm. I think to pretend that ain't so does us a disservice. I mean, how we tame that beast is one thing, but it's there for a purpose. On the other hand, they receive, which is, I think, kind of an image for their nurturing capabilities and desires. So, of course, they want security, and they want affection, and they want relationships, and they want stability. And if you mix up those roles with false definitions of masculinity and femininity, as is the case today, then people are not happy. I mean, I don't think most women really want to go out there and slug it out to have a job, bring the bread home, take care of the family, do that whole thing that used to be defined as a male's job. I think they would rather take care of their friends, their mother, their children, and perhaps, excellent woman, Proverbs 31, have a job as well, perhaps. Men, I still think down in here, yeah, we want to be heroes. I want to be the breadwinner. I want to at least give it a whack. Honey, you may be a doctor, good for you. You may triple my salary, good for you. But still, I want to validate I have a purpose by getting out there in the field and doing something with it. You mentioned purpose earlier. I think it was before we started recording. Somebody did. I mean, we have to. We don't do anything without a purpose. We don't schedule an appointment. Hey, you want to have a cup of coffee? What are we going to talk about? Nothing? No. Want to go fishing? Yes. And then we'll have a cup of coffee and talk. Right?
Well, it's like, and I don't. This may have been, true of all time, but the proliferation of men getting together now and either smoking cigars or drinking whiskey.
Yeah.
Because men will not just get together and talk.
Exactly.
There has to be something, and just that menial element has gotten men together.
Yeah. I love it. I'm just sitting here thinking about a fishing trip I took with my son. I mean, on the other hand, a uniquely male function too is to have a guy sitting right here with two poles in the water and nobody's saying anything. And occasionally you just want to go over here and go, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's okay. And that, golly, like, my gosh. Going back to the difference in how men have retreated from their roles, which has created a void which women have tried to fill. Yeah. And that is the most unloving thing that we could possibly do for women, is to create a void that their sin nature is going to drive them to fill.
Yeah.
And tell them you can do that when they were not designed to be able to do that. It's like telling them to lift a car.
This satanic tactic has really worked. I mean, there's a lot of men out there that have been neutered by the feminist agenda that particularly has been adopted by strong women that have essentially figured out, particularly with artificial insemination, they don't need a man. Mm-hmm. And they particularly, and here's where I have to applaud them to a degree. If you're going to have a man like some of the men I've met in my lifetime, No, you don't need him in the house. Kick him, the hell out.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't belong being a parasite or a blood-sucking tick on you, ma'am, while you're trying to knock down a job and take care of your kids and your mother, and maybe your dad too. They're older. Yeah, that's an unfair role. So Satan has wiped out the female lifestyle with, in my view, the feminine agenda, and it has neutered a bunch of males, which is, could that be part of the growth in homosexuality? Without gender distinctions that work, we just go with gender fluidity to try to find something that'll work? Why not? I mean, people are creative. They're looking to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for love. That whole deal, I don't condemn it per se. I feel sorry for it.
Yeah.
What I condemn is that we who have the truth, I guess I should have brought a Bible, right? Although it's in my heart, brother, that we that know the truth haven't shouted maybe louder from the house, rooftops, or perhaps what the reason we haven't is because we really haven't lived it ourselves and we don't have a leg to stand on. People are not going to listen to us because we don't manifest the kind of solid, mature, okay, you get it.
And I think we know it too, and I think we're ashamed. And I think shame is what depresses most men from speaking the truth.
Yes, sir. I don't know if through some of your friendships with some of the guys we both know, whether you've heard the name David Allen, but he's an eminent psychiatrist. He, bless his heart, he has to live in the Bahamas.
Some of us have to suffer for the kingdom.
But he spent a lot of time on the East Coast taking care of the rich and famous in D.C. and elsewhere. I've had the privilege of sitting with him in groups, and his big deal is the destructiveness of shame. He's written several books on it. Shame just wrecks everything. Yeah. And who's the great shamer? The accuser of the brethren, Satan, right? Yeah. So there's a lot. I mean, I hope somebody took notes. There's a lot of things we could do. You know, we could all read and pray with a perspective of how does this affect me? Do you think that we're afraid of dealing with ourselves?
100%. Yeah. Or if anything, we're scared to death of it because it's because we'd have to do something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that the devil does not convince. He doesn't have to convince us to do things evil. He just has to convince us to do nothing.
So I'm with you 1,000 on that one. We're afraid because we're going to have to do something, and we don't want to be there because we're afraid then we'll fail.
Yeah.
Success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pathetic.
Mm-hmm. Give me the SARS again for men, because I think that's the R, isn't it? Respect.
Success, the last S. Sex, respect, adventure, right? S-A. So sex, adventure, respect, and success. One of the things when I talked to my guide the morning of the third day, I brought that up. I had a 4-hour drive from the airport out to the ranch. Well, ranches, they have, never mind.
Yeah, their ranches are a little different.
Yeah, it goes forever. Yeah, the range, I should say, home on the range. We talked about SARS. He's getting ready to get engaged, and so I went through that whole thing. And everybody finds it fascinating because the problem with SARS is that we're supposed to, I'm a complementarian, not egalitarian, which is what we're talking about. And the deal is that my drive, for sex gets blunted by, she wants affection first, please, So the old saying used to be, men will give affection to get sex, and women will give sex to get affection. But if I blow her up by pulling her out of her relationships, and then I'm out of town every weekend, building my business, there's no affection. I've wrecked her sense of security and stability, and relationships are gone. Past relationships, no future relationships, because new in town. I mean, I wrecked it all. As I was driving for adventure, respect, and success. So the difficulty with marriage is trying to blend those things, trying to figure out how to be second, really. I'm sure you're familiar with Kanakuk Camp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's where my parents met.
Yeah. Yeah. Did they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I'm third. I am third. God first, you second, honey. And it's hard to do that. I think some of us do that. I'd like to get your take on this. I think some men find it hard to be third because they have just driven, almost as a bully, but they have just driven to be first so that they can accomplish their ego needs and any sense of self-confidence. To do less means they've failed. What do you think about that?
Because I think that we attribute the way that we measure success is ranking.
Yes, true.
We rank each other. We compare ourselves to each other,
Mm-hmm.
and in the most convoluted ways. The most of that money.
Yeah.
I don't know how you change that with men because it is such a strong animator.
So being third, putting others first. I experienced for the first time when I really did die a little to self when in Idaho, which it was so totally Jim Coté, so totally all about me. I decided I would leave my dreamland to go to hot, humid Texas.
It is a dreamland, by the way. Idaho is quite spectacular.
I told you I cried once in front of Brenda. The second time I cried when I left. I looked at all those snow-capped mountains and went, and I was in a fit of depression for the first year in Texas. But anyway, I got over it. That drive to be first, third means you're a failure in this world, right? Even NASCAR and sports too. Second is just first loser, is what they say.
Yeah.
So how can you do this? You can't. It's supernatural. It was the first time I stepped into God's power. He gave me the power to not be me and to be what Brenda needed me to be. And every time I've ever done that, it's just solidified our relationship even more. Now, I'm 49 years this year. I'm still struggling with this. It's not hard. I really do have the gift of selfishness, and I kind of come by it the right way in that for the first, when did I get married? 23? For the first 23 years of my life, most of my self-survival was based on me being focused on self-survival. So it's kind of embedded in my warp and woof, unfortunately. And maybe every man has it that way.
How do you separate because there's a difference, I would say there's a difference between selfishness and would you say interestedness? The idea of needing to put your mask on first before you put your mask on other people.
You got to be right. There's got to be degrees. One of the first things that we get to enjoy with new babies is they become aware of they're a self.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a while. They're looking at their fingers and stuff. It's interesting. But as we progress, we get really focused on us. Either maybe it's all the pain. Is why we get so focused on self, and that becomes selfish. Is it's a defense mechanism to block from pain. Because I don't think I can be unselfish. I could be more concerned for you unless the Holy Spirit gave me the power to do that. Yeah. It's just not, I don't think it's natural. It's the natural man.
That's our calling, to put off what is.
See, passivity is another issue too.
Oh, for sure.
Now, did I interrupt the thought? Were you going to say
no, because it was there for a second and then it was gone. But continue.
Genesis is one of my, I guess they all are, it's a favorite book of mine. It's occurred to me that what's going on now is we're moving backwards through Genesis, first with the destruction of the family, Genesis 4, and then all the way back. But
deconstructing.
Yeah, we are. I think it's Satan's plan. But Adam was so passive.
Yep.
He named the animals, and then God gave him a wife, and he named her. But after that, the affair at the restaurant for dinner, it was really bad. It was kind of like, one of the maitre d' coming up and sitting down at the table and giving your wife his key to the hotel room upstairs, you know. I mean, it would be one thing to let a man sit down there and seduce your wife against your will. It's another thing to go along with it without saying anything. I mean, and I'm afraid that passivity thing, you know, particularly with the curse, is in every one of us. Every male that has all of this other stuff going for him, you know, success, adventure, respect, sex as we can get it, you know, strong, able, capable, smart, pierce through boundaries, conquer the world, invent stuff, do stuff, make stuff, correct stuff, fix stuff. And then we just don't engage. We just like lay down. We just sit down. Like a little kid at Disneyland that's just tired of walking. You didn't care where he's at, you know. Just sits, done. I mean, what's with that? How do you fix that? Really, I'm asking myself.
You got to give men a vision. And I mean, the strongest vision is right there in front of them in the Bible. I mean, everything's there. Mission, adventure, calling, like all of it.
It is.
For men to respond to is right there. And I think it's very much the opportunity of the church to call men to that.
So just for fun, I know you've had no practice in this. Give me 2 or 3 or 5 names of the men in the Bible that you feel like either captured their vision or were willing to just blindly follow God's vision for them, but they did it. They stepped up and made it happen.
Daniel and Lion's Den.
Boy, thank you. That's one
Daniel's
of my
big
first.
one. I think Gideon.
Yes.
I think David as a boy. I think David is as later on in life. I cannot imagine David going through making the decisions that he did, and then living the rest of his life. Yeah. With that consequence.
Yeah.
I just can't even imagine.
He could have folded like a tent.
He could have. He could have just ended it, but he kept. He went back and said, "All right, I was wrong." There's a lot of little stories like that sprinkled throughout the Bible that I think are overlooked a lot of the times. So when men sin, what do?
Well, I'm thinking about Peter along those lines. I mean, he had a couple big ones, but he stepped up at the end.
The denial.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And even when he pooped out, said, "I'm done. Let's go fishing." And Christ shows up on the shore. Hey, little ones. Little ones. Got any fish? What the?
We forget that they were just dudes. They were just men in their time that were dealing with the exact same emotions that we do. Gosh, that's so true. So what are some of the ones for you?
Well, you named. I don't think I would have said Gideon, but I agree. But David and Daniel for sure. I love Samuel. In fact, in some respects, I feel like some of my ministry is similar in the sense that he was a circuit rider. He had a territory, and he just dealt with men. Sometimes the high men, the kings, and the big guys, and sometimes the low guys. And but he stepped up and all the way to the end. I think he's one of the few that there's not a bad thing said about him.
I got another one, Aaron.
Yeah. Aaron, yes,
because he was. Yeah, he took a lot of the responsibility for what he was his mouthpiece.
He made one big goober. Right? Are we talking about the same Aaron?
With the golden calf? I'm talking about 100%. Yeah, and I'm talking back in the fact that he went through all of that before not being the guy.
Yeah,
like serving kind of the mission of another man.
He really did. He's the spokesman.
Yeah,
Yeah, he would have fit in some presidency as what do they call him? The chief media person.
Is there? I should know the answer to this. Is there a story of a man in the Bible other than Christ that does not include a very specific sin that he committed?
Very few. Samuel's one that I can think of. Elisha is another. I would hate to say that Elijah sinned, but he did fall apart, and the Lord let him off the hook with, you got 2 or 3 things to do, and then you can go home. But Elisha's one. We don't know a lot about Luke. He's extolled in the New Testament as one of the brethren, but there's nothing bad said about him. Timothy lost heart.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not too many, are there?
No, there aren't, and I think that's intentional. I think
Yeah.
it's intentional that God saw it fit to like show us that these are men.
Good point, Brian. So the important thing with those men is how they finished, right?
Yeah.
That's what's disappointing to me about Solomon, is that he finished so poorly. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he didn't even like have a good ninth inning. You know,
Yeah.
He just never got on base again. Yeah. Well, partner, I've enjoyed this time.
This is fun.
It is. It was
do
fun.
this again.
Yeah.
What if I can just one more question?
Sure.
What's the wisest thing any man's ever told you?
I have had the privilege of having some men in my lives that surprised me years later. At this age, I think back on things they've said to me that help so much. But the one that always sticks out the most is I heard Billy Graham in 1981 give a interview. I think it was to KCBI here in Dallas, I think. And they asked him essentially the same thing. And he said that his early mentor, when he asked him why he was so wise, he said, "I read a chapter of Proverbs every day, and I recommend you do the same thing." And Graham on that interview said, "So that day I started reading, whatever day of the month it is, a chapter of Proverbs to gain wisdom, and I've never stopped." And that was 1981, and I went, given my background, okay, I'm just fresh here from Idaho, where I'm literally running away from trouble. I thought, oh man, if I can only do one thing, I can do that, you know. And so I picked up that mantle that day. I've read a chapter every day since, and it really has been the most helpful thing ever. Just read Proverbs and believe it, which means believing and obeying are the same thing. So, yeah. And I'm a learner by temperament. I love to learn. I drove my guide crazy, asking him questions. You may have noticed I ask you a few questions. You know, I just want to keep learning, and keep working on being a better man. I've still got a long way to go. Ask my wife.
It's a perfect way to land the plane right there.
Okay.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Let's do it again.